Fake HOA cops blocked my parking. I'm the actual police chief. They slashed my tires while quoting bylaws that didn't exist. I hadn't been back in my old neighborhood a full month before it started. Two smug men in polo shirts and knockoff security badges blocking my driveway like they owned the pavement. And behind them, Karen. If you've ever met a woman who thought her Facebook group outranked the Constitution, that's her. Hair sprayed into submission, lips pursed tighter than a traffic citation, clipboard clutched like the Holy Grail. Karen. They didn't know I was Chief Holland. They just saw a black woman in plain clothes pulling into her own driveway. That was their mistake. I grew up in this neighborhood. My dad used to fix radios for the neighbors before there was Wi-Fi. My mom taught piano out of our little house on Violet Lane. That driveway, my driveway, is where I learned to change a tire and how to walk tall even when folks stared too long. I moved back home last month after the mayor asked me to take the job. Chief of police, 44 officers under me. First black woman to lead the department in this county. They celebrated me in the press, but no one notified Karen. It started with a sticky note on my windshield, residents only. This isn't a city lot. Next came a complaint to City Hall claiming my cruiser was an unauthorized government vehicle. And then, that Saturday morning, my front tires slashed. The HOA's fake security detail standing guard, arms crossed, saying I was trespassing on private controlled asphalt. That was when I knew this wasn't ignorance. It was a war, and I wasn't about to lose it. It didn't take much digging. By Monday morning, I was in uniform not for show, but because I had an early meeting with the city council. I swung by my driveway before heading to HQ, still furious from Saturday. My cruiser was boxed in by two golf carts with makeshift sirens duct taped on top, and sitting on a collapsible lawn chair between them, Ted and Ron, the self-declared HOA enforcement officers. They wore matching navy polos that read Civic Patrol. Cheap badges glinted in the sun. No official agency markings. Just ego and polyester. "You're not authorized to park here," Ted barked before I could even put the car in park. I stepped out slow, letting the badge on my hip catch the light. "And you're not authorized to issue citations on public land. This driveway is mine. Check the deed." Ron's face twitched. "We have a mandate from the HOA to there is no HOA on this street." I raised a brow. "You're enforcing policies that don't exist." That's when Karen came stomping out from behind her hydrangeas like she was queen of the neighborhood. "Officer Holland," she sneered, clearly trying not to say my name too loud. "This isn't personal. This is about standards. We can't let just anyone disrupt the aesthetic flow of our street." "Just anyone," I repeated. "You mean the police chief?" Her eyes flicked over the cruiser, as if searching for rust. "You're flaunting your position to park wherever you want. I own the home. I own the driveway. I don't need to flaunt anything." I looked straight into her narrowed, Botoxed eyes. "But I will remind you that impersonating a law enforcement officer is a felony in this state." Dead silence. You could practically hear the sprinkler heads retreat underground. That afternoon, I pulled every city record on Violet Lane. As I suspected, the HOA had been dissolved legally 6 years ago after budget fraud allegations, but Karen had kept it going, a fake HOA, operating like it still held power. She created newsletters, assigned officers, and collected voluntary dues that weren't voluntary at all. And somehow, the neighbors either complied or stayed quiet. I wasn't about to stay quiet. The next morning, my inbox was flooded. Karen had filed a complaint to the mayor's office claiming I was abusing power for personal gain. She said I threatened her with violence and jail in front of her security team. The emails had been forwarded to me for transparency, but I recognized the tone. I've read 1,000 versions of it over the years, the language of privilege, deflection, victimhood worn like armor. I forwarded it to Internal Affairs myself. If she wanted a war, it was going to be documented. That Friday, I got home to find my garage door spray painted. Abuse of power, corruption, and underneath, in red, "No cops in our community." I called in a patrol car not to arrest anyone, but to file an official report. Not even 5 minutes into the officer's presence, Karen emerged, phone out, recording like she was the one under siege. "You're going to make the whole block look like a crime zone," she yelled. "Is that what you want, Officer Holland?" The responding officer gave her a once-over. "Ma'am, this is a hate incident under state code. I'd suggest you stop filming and start cooperating." Karen smirked, but she backed up. She always did. Once someone with a real badge stepped in. Still, I could see it in her eyes. This wasn't the end. It was escalation. Then I got the anonymous tip. A neighbor, someone who knew me from childhood but hadn't dared speak up, left a typed note in my mailbox. They've got a secret WhatsApp group. They call themselves the Preservation Force. They're not just targeting you. They've chased out 3 black families in the last 2 years. Ted and Ron act like it's neighborhood watch, but they wear fake uniforms, stalk driveways, and they even carry tasers now. Be careful. Karen's got more influence than you think. Preservation Force, fake HOA cops, fake power, and a coordinated campaign of harassment in my town under my nose? No, not on my watch. The thing about cowards is they're loud in packs and silent alone. That note in my mailbox changed everything. Suddenly, I wasn't just a target, I was a pattern, a symbol, and Karen's fake HOA wasn't just a nuisance. It was a well-oiled machine for social control, dressed up as neighborhood standards. So I did what real law enforcement does best. I investigated. First, I got a warrant to trace the origin of the anonymous complaints filed against me. Not the big ones, but the small, repeated violations: trash bins too early, loud garage door, improper vehicle alignment. All of it had been submitted under rotating burner emails. But the IP addresses led back to a single source: Karen's Wi-Fi. She wasn't just inventing violations. She was spamming city departments with fake complaints to make my life unlivable. Second, I cross-checked police records and code enforcement logs for the past 5 years. 3 addresses caught my attention, all homeowners of color, all cited repeatedly for noncompliance, and all sold their homes within 6 months of moving in. 2 had filed formal grievances. 1 was never processed. Each complaint signed by the HOA, which legally no longer existed. Karen had created a ghost government and weaponized it. I called a community town hall. I didn't do it as Chief Holland. I did it as Monique, the girl who grew up on Violet Lane and was tired of seeing her neighborhood held hostage. I stood up in the rec center, holding the printouts. "How many of you paid a $75 landscaping fine in the past 5 years?" I asked. About half the hands went up. "How many of you received a violation notice signed HOA management?" More hands, and then I dropped the bomb. There is no HOA. It was legally dissolved in 2017. Every fine you paid, every letter you got, it was fake. You were scammed. Gasps, murmurs. A few shouted. What Karen wasn't present. But Ted and Ron were standing in the back with their arms crossed, sweating bullets under their matching polos. I turned toward them. "And as for the so-called Civic Patrol, there is no such department recognized by the city. These men impersonated law enforcement. They blocked driveways, carried weapons, and harassed residents," someone shouted from the back. "My son has video of them chasing his friend." Another woman stood up. "They towed my cousin's car and demanded $200 in cash." The tide had turned. What had been whispered fears became furious testimony. But Karen wasn't done yet. 2 nights later, I woke to the smell of smoke. My front yard was on fire. Someone had doused my lawn with gasoline and lit it. The flames danced up to my hedges before the sprinklers cut in, and my neighbor, Mr. Alvarez, came running with a hose. We put it out in time, but not before the grass was scorched and the word liar was burned into the lawn. A hate crime, arson, in my front yard. By morning, my house was surrounded by news vans. They'd gotten wind of the fake HOA operation, and now that the police chief's home had been targeted, the press smelled blood. Reporters knocked on neighbors' doors. Residents began speaking out. One woman admitted Karen told her the HOA was still informally active and that all payments went to community improvement. But there were no improvements, only control. That's when I got the call from Darnell. Darnell King was a former Marine, now a youth boxing coach. He lived 3 streets over and had clashed with Karen's crew before. They shut down my block party last summer. He told me over coffee, said it violated noise ordinances, but I checked. No such rule. They even tried to take my permit sign down. He leaned in. I've got folks who've had enough. You want to take this down for real? We'll back you. That was the start of the Underground Alliance, a coalition of neighbors tired of the tyranny. Darnell brought in Mr. Alvarez, who'd once been fined for a barbecue pit, Ms. Tran, whose holiday lights violated uniform brightness, the Patel brothers, whose Tesla was towed for not matching HOA color codes. We met quietly, coordinated, documented everything. We filed an injunction with the city. We compiled every instance of fraudulent HOA fines, forged enforcement letters, property interference, and impersonation of authority. Then I forwarded it all to the district attorney and attached my sworn statement signed as Chief Monique Holland. It was out of my hands now, legally, but morally I wasn't done. That weekend, Karen held her usual HOA coffee social at the clubhouse, which, by the way, hadn't belonged to the HOA in years. It was city managed, but she'd claimed long-standing privilege. I showed up uninvited, in uniform. The minute I walked through the doors, the room went still. Karen was mid-sip of her latte, dressed in pearls like a Stepford queen. "Oh, Chief Holland," she said sweetly. "Didn't expect you at a community function." "I'm not here for lattes," I said calmly. "I'm here to let everyone know that you are under investigation. Your so-called HOA is an illegal entity, and these men I nodded at Ted and Ron are facing charges for impersonating officers and unlawful harassment." Karen's smile slipped. Ted stood, puffing his chest. "You have no right to sit down." I took a step forward. "You're lucky I'm not cuffing you right now." Gasps rippled through the room. And then Ms. Tran stood up. "I paid you over $600 in fake fines. I want my money back." "Mr. Patel, you towed my car in front of my kids." They cried for hours. Voices rose one by one until the room was a roar. Karen backed away, trembling, lips parting, but no words came. Her empire of fear was crumbling. Right there, in public, with cameras rolling outside. The subpoenas hit like thunderclaps. Karen, Ted, Ron, and 3 other names I didn't recognize, all summoned to testify before a grand jury on charges ranging from impersonating officers to wire fraud and criminal misrepresentation. The DA had moved fast, faster than I expected. But then again, the whole city was watching. Local news outlets ran headlines like "Wildfire Fake HOA Ring, Busted in Violet Lane Scandal." "Police Chief Exposes Suburban Harassment. Syndicate Homeowners Reclaim Their Street." Even national media started circling. CNN ran a piece on the fake HOA plague in American suburbs. Suddenly, our quiet town was ground zero for a larger conversation about neighborhood tyranny. But the real storm that was still coming, what nobody knew yet, was that Karen's HOA operation wasn't just a social power trip, it was a business. The city finance department reached out with a jaw-dropping discovery. Karen had opened 2 separate LLCs under the names Violet Lane Civic Trust and Community Enhancement Fund. Through those entities, she'd collected nearly $220,000 in fines, maintenance donations, and enforcement fees over 5 years. None of it taxed, none of it declared, none of it legal. She had laundered homeowner money through a fake HOA. And guess what? She used Ted and Ron as the enforcement arm to extract payments, sometimes through threats, other times by towing, fake legal notices, and property liens that weren't real. I'd uncovered a miniature criminal enterprise. The Patel brothers, brilliant tech guys, dug deeper. With their help, we traced the so-called Preservation Force WhatsApp group Karen ran. Over 2,000 messages were uncovered. Some were just gossip. Others were dangerous. "Get her car out of here. This is a white street. He plays rap music on his porch. Nail him with noise." Make sure to intimidate them at night. That's when they're weakest. It wasn't just corruption, it was targeted racial harassment. The city held a televised press conference the following week. As chief, I stood behind the podium, uniform pressed, voice steady. We will not tolerate fake power. We will not tolerate hate dressed up as policy. And we will never allow our neighborhoods to become playgrounds for fear. The applause was deafening. That night, she released a video on her private HOA Facebook page, still active, where she called the investigation a personal vendetta, claimed I brought inner-city tactics to a peaceful community, and accused me of being a media hound in uniform. It went viral for all the wrong reasons. The comments turned against her. This isn't leadership. It's delusion. She stole from us and is playing the victim. My grandma paid that woman $300 to keep her mailbox by morning. Her video had been flagged and taken down, but the damage was done to her. Ted was arrested first, a simple felony count of impersonating an officer. They found a fake badge, a retractable baton, and even a set of police-style lights in his garage. Ron came next. He cracked under questioning, confessed everything, said Karen ran it like a military op and promised he'd get a cut of the dues. Karen, she lawyered up, fast, tried to plea out with a restitution deal, but the DA refused. The scale of her fraud, her racial bias, and her arrogance on camera made it political suicide to let her slide. They were pursuing prison time, and for the first time, I saw her for what she really was. Not just a neighborhood tyrant, not just a fake president, a woman so drunk on her illusion of power, she forgot there were real laws. The hearings drew crowds. Residents packed the courthouse lawn with signs like, "We are not your subjects." Real justice, not fake cops. Thank you, Chief Holland. Some of the families who moved away came back just to testify. One mother broke down explaining how her 10-year-old daughter stopped riding her bike after Ron followed her for safety checks. Another father described how he was fined for cooking outside when he hosted a Ramadan meal. The weight of truth hit harder than jail bars ever could. During evidence collection, a junior officer found something buried deep in Karen's digital trail, a wire transfer from one of her HOA accounts to an account in another state. The name on the account, Wesley M., Carol, her ex-husband, and a former city council member in North Carolina, recently indicted for similar HOA-related fraud. It was never just Karen. This was a system, a blueprint, a nationwide scam using fake HOA enforcement as a shell to extort communities. I contacted the FBI. They're still building the case, but I was told our town's effort exposed a network stretching across 5 states. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just about reclaiming Violet Lane. We'd uncovered something far bigger. By the end of the month, Karen was charged with 19 counts of fraud, harassment, hate-based intimidation, and racketeering. Ted and Ron pled guilty and took deals community service and banned from any civic leadership. The city council voted to create a resident protection task force, with me as honorary chair. All previous HOA fines collected over the last 5 years were refunded from Karen's seized assets. We threw one hell of a block party. No fake fine, no watchful stares, just music, barbecue, laughter. Darnell grilled ribs. Miss Tran brought spring rolls. The Patel twins set up a drone camera to take a group shot over Violet Lane, free, unified, and loud. Kids chalked "No Karen Zone" on the sidewalks. And I just watched. For the first time in a long time, I exhaled. Courtroom reckoning. They read the verdict out loud, each charge landing like a hammer. Fraud, guilty. Impersonation of government authority, guilty. Racially motivated harassment, guilty. Wire fraud, conspiracy to defraud. Abuse of civil process, guilty. 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 Karen didn't cry. She sat there in that courtroom, jaw tight, hands trembling in her lap, wearing the same smug expression she used to wield like a weapon at neighborhood barbecues. But I knew what was really happening beneath it, the unraveling of control. When the judge sentenced her to 11 years in prison and mandated $200,000 in restitution to be divided among affected residents, The gasp in the room was immediate. A few clapped, others just sat in shock. But me, I stared at her, calm. Not because I didn't feel anything, but because this was never about revenge. It was about restoring order, real order, law, justice, and showing people like Karen that a clipboard and entitlement don't make you invincible. Ted and Ron. They pled out weeks earlier. They got 3 years of supervised probation, 1,000 hours of community service, and a court-ordered gag order preventing them from holding any civic position or operating a business involving security, enforcement, or housing law. Their statements were filled with regret. Sure, but to me, regret means little when it only comes after you're caught. Ted now sweeps floors at the community rec center he used to police with a toy badge. Ron, last I heard, he moved 2 towns over and sells used motorcycles. Funny how the badges come off once the lights are real. The bigger system falls. The FBI case blew wide open. 3 more towns across 2 states reported identical scams, fake HOA boards, volunteer patrol units, fines collected off books, and residents of color disproportionately targeted. Karen's ex-husband, Wesley Carroll, was arrested in Raleigh, NC. Turns out, he'd coached several suburban HOAs on how to form private compliance groups. He called it community self-policing, but the DOJ had another name for it: coordinated civil rights fraud. When I was invited to testify before a federal subcommittee on housing justice, I stood tall, in my uniform, on national television. And I said, this isn't just about one Karen. This is about an epidemic of fake power hiding behind picket fences. It's time we treated it like the threat it is. Violet Lane today. The grass has grown back over the burnt patch in my yard. The city formally reclaimed ownership of the clubhouse Karen used to pretend was hers. It's now home to a rotating calendar of real events, community cookouts, tutoring programs, and open mic nights. We installed motion-detecting lights and cameras on each corner, not because we expect trouble, but because no one here will ever feel unprotected again. I still walk the block sometimes at sunset. Darnell coaches in the driveway with the neighborhood kids. Miss Swan Tran grows cucumbers now. The Patels rigged their garage to open with facial recognition, because of course they did. And my mailbox, it's painted red, white, and blue. Just a quiet reminder that I didn't fight back just for myself. I did it for everyone who thought they had to stay quiet to stay safe. People ask me now, why didn't you just move? I had every reason to. But if every good person leaves, what's left? Who gets to rewrite the rules of what's acceptable? Who stands up to the Karens and the Teds and the systems that let them grow? Sometimes, justice isn't loud. It's steady, methodical, relentless. Like a woman in a badge who knows who she is and refuses to be pushed off her own land. Let's talk about it. Have you ever witnessed or experienced fake authority in your community? Do you think HOAs should have more oversight or be dissolved entirely? Where's the line between community standards and abuse of power? Share your thoughts below, because the only way to take power back is together.